conference. The list of attendants is more than impressive, and I look forward to the panel discussion as well as numerous bilateral meetings. I'm equally thrilled to be here in Warsaw to send a strong message of our support to Poland and to our Eastern allies in the face of Russia's aggression. The most recent manifestations of this aggression were Russian drones and fighter jets that entered Polish and Estonian airspace 2 weeks ago. This is unacceptable. It is a violation of international law, and it is an irresponsible provocation in times of already heightened tensions. And that is why it is suitable for causing very dangerous misunderstandings. These acts have shown us once more Russia is becoming more and more of a threat to NATO. It is testing NATO allies with growing frequency and intensity. Putin deliberately attempts to undermine European security and the territorial integrity of European nations. He seeks to provoke NATO member states. He wants to expose vulnerabilities within our alliance. But, ladies and gentlemen, he won't succeed. The alliance has responded to Russia's provocations with clarity, unity, resolve, and prudence. We will not be lured into Putin's trap of continuous escalation. We are keeping a cool head while remaining steadfast and determined. And when needed, NATO forces stand ready, just like the jets of our allies in the Baltics that were scrambled and escorted Russian aircraft out of Estonian airspace. We will continue working together closely on strengthening our air defense. With Eastern Sentry, we are adding another layer of protection to our overall posture, to our airspace and our territory along NATO's eastern flank. Germany is contributing 4 Eurofighters to this end. I have also just decided to deploy Bundeswehr personnel equipped with counter-drone equipment to Denmark to support our northern ally in securing next week's meeting of European heads of state and government. But each and every ally needs to take a real close look at what they can do to boost air defense, especially on the eastern flank. Ladies and gentlemen, NATO partners have been facing threats, provocations, and aggressions from Russia. At the same time, all this is nothing compared to the devastating situation in Ukraine after more than 3 years of Russia's war of aggression, of brutal killings of civilians, of ruthless nightly raids on Ukrainian cities, of calculated attacks on the country's lifeline infrastructure. Ukraine's story is that of a people defending its very existence from a brutal aggressor. It is the story of a nation determined to defend its identity, its dependence, its sovereignty. And it is also the story of a fight for the rules-based international order, for freedom and security in Europe, a fight for our freedom and security. During my visits to Ukraine, I have experienced firsthand the suffering of the Ukrainian people. But I have also seen just how quickly they picked themselves up by the bootstraps and continued their brave fight. Ukraine has become an example of what it means to be prepared to defend one's freedom with arms in hand if necessary. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why we Europeans must not waver in our solidarity with Ukraine. We must continue our political, financial, and, of course, most importantly, our military support. Germany remains steadfast in its commitment. We are now the largest supporter of Ukraine. We are spending around 9 billion euros per year to support Ukraine in its brave fight. Russia's recent attacks with more than 580 drones and over 40 missiles have once again underlined the importance of strengthening Ukraine's air defense. And that is exactly what we are doing. Germany has delivered 3 Patriot systems. By the end of this year, we will provide 2 more advanced Patriot air defense systems with the support of our Norwegian partners. At the same time, it is our funds that are strengthening Ukraine's defense industry. On top of that, we also make sure we use available production capacities to bolster our own defenses. A robust industrial base is the foundation for defense capabilities that are meant to last. Through the European training mission EUMAM, we have already trained more than 80,000 troops. Large parts of them were trained in our multinational special training command in Strausberg and in Poland's Combined Arms Training Command in Chagrin. Germany and Poland, together with other partners, are also collaborating in a number of capability coalitions to enhance and modernize the Ukrainian armed forces. We want Ukraine to be able to deter future threats. To better address future threats to Ukraine and to Europe as a whole, Europe's and Ukraine's defense industry must work together more closely and more effectively. We all have to provide sustainable support to Ukraine, more resiliently and more forcefully than in recent months. The European Union must back this by providing a much more flexible regulatory framework for the defense industry in Europe. This is the only way to quickly scale up our production capacities and, as a consequence, our deliveries to Ukraine. This is in our very own strategic interest, as our American allies are turning more and more towards other regions and as we work towards preserving peace and collective security in Europe. In recent months, there has been much talk about peace agreements. This is something we all wish for, of course, but for now, this remains wishful thinking, because reality is unfortunately very different. Diplomatic efforts fail to bring about any meaningful breakthroughs. Russia continues to wage its illegal war against Ukraine, and it has even increased its attacks on Ukraine to an unprecedented level of brutality. All of this leaves no doubt, ladies and gentlemen. Vladimir Putin does not want a ceasefire, and he does not want peace for Ukraine. So today we must focus on empowering Ukraine and bolstering its defense. The strongest security guarantee for the moment will be world-class equipment, sufficient resources, and extensive training for the Ukraine armed forces. Ladies and gentlemen, Germany continues to stand firmly by the people of Ukraine. Our goal is to see Ukraine enter into meaningful negotiations to achieve lasting peace. And for that, Ukraine must be strong. This is our responsibility as Europeans. This is a task of our time. We must and we will continue to do our part to ensure that a free Ukraine becomes an integral part of our shared European future. We must and we will continue to support Ukraine in its fight, a fight that is also a fight for our future. We must and we will do more for defense in Europe. NATO must become more European in order to remain transatlantic. This is what it takes for our continent to be whole, free, and at peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Please do join me. Minister, thank you so much. We're going to take what the Minister has just outlined and dissect it a little bit further. Please join me in welcoming onto the stage the Minister of Defence for the Netherlands, Ruben Brekelmans. Big round of applause, please. Thank you. The Minister of Defence for Estonia, Hanno Pevkur. And the Commissioner for Defence and Space for the European Commission, Andrius Kubilius. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Where do we start? I think we need to go first to Estonia, because obviously that must have been a heck of a shock to have those jets in your airspace.
Well, good morning.
Morning.
No, it was not a shock. We've seen that before. at the moment, we have Italians doing the Baltic air patrolling mission, and actually they've scrambled in last 2 months 7 times, Russian fighter jets. Just before the Russians flew over the international waters. So it's a difference. But nevertheless, it was unprecedented, 12 minutes. And even though many are speculating that was this a navigation error or whatever, the reality is that the Russian fighters and the pilots didn't react to the NATO fighter jets. They didn't react and replied to the aircom, which contacted them. So nobody can say that they didn't know where they are. They knew perfectly where they are. They knew perfectly that they are in NATO's airspace, and they didn't do anything to leave, let's say, voluntarily from there. So this is why we had to use the signals and force, and this was a good example of great cooperation between the Finnish Air Force, NATO's air policing mission, and Swedish Air Force. So, but nevertheless, this is the reality we face every day, and they've violated our airspace also before, but for a very short time. Now it was 12 minutes, and absolutely we all understand that this is not acceptable, and this is why we started also Article 4 consultations, and this is why we went immediately to the UN Security Council, where we saw that the Russians do not care about the international law. They just lie there, live in United Nations, that they didn't violate, although we showed the radar pictures. So unfortunately, we had to unclassify some of the radar information, but we had to do that to show that the Russians are lying over and over again.
Commissioner, when you have the Russian delegation just categorically saying that black is white and white is black, how do you counteract that? Do these jets need to be shot down?
Well, it's for NATO perhaps to decide, or for member states also, but it's very clear that Russian provocations or testing of European defense capabilities are increasing, and that is to what we need to react in a very clear way. That is why on last Friday we had a good conversation, good discussion with the ministers from what we call frontier region, with participation also of Danish Minister of Defense, Ukrainian Defense Minister, and we were talking how we need to build what we call drone wall. Because what those provocations have shown that really our capabilities in detecting drones, in destroying drones, need to be ramped up. And that is where we can learn a lot from Ukraine. And definitely to build that wall also we need together with Ukraine. Because Ukrainians now have unique knowledge, unique know-how, and I came to some kind of conclusion which for me at first was a little bit, strange, but conclusion is very simple. Till now we are talking how we need to help Ukraine and we need to increase our assistance to Ukraine, but now we need also to ask Ukraine to help us. So, because really those provocations, I can predict that they will be even increasing, and that is why what we need to do in increasing our defense readiness, where we shall come very soon to the Council with roadmap, need to reflect exactly this very rapidly changing situation and to do very practical jobs in delivering our defense capabilities.
Thank you, sir. Minister Brekelmans, we heard from the Commissioner there saying that potentially the West can learn from Ukraine. We heard Volodymyr Zelensky saying that he is willing to share his knowledge. Is the EU doing enough to bring Ukraine into the fold? Should it have speeded up EU entry? Is that something that you are discussing in the Netherlands?
I think we should all do more to learn from the experience of Ukraine. In Poland, it were our F-35 pilots that were taking out some of the drones. and they have done an amazing job. They have been working all night. It was also a great international cooperation between the Polish F-16s and Italian AWACS. We had a tanker airplane. We had the Dutch F-35s. So it was really special what happened there. Also the first time that NATO was taking out a threat in this way. So it was, in that sense, it was historic. But on the other hand, of course, it was not the most efficient way to take out these cheap drones. And I think we can learn from Ukraine in the sense that we should all invest in more effective counter-drone systems that are not only effective at specific locations, but indeed across the entire eastern flank. And I think we should work together with Ukrainians on all levels. So that's on a political level, ministers of defense, but also on a military level, also on a lower level, because we need to be much quicker than we are right now. Because when we talk about investment horizons for these systems, also in the Netherlands, it's a matter of months or even years, and we don't have that time because we have drone incursions every day.
Everyday drone incursions, that's sobering. That's really sobering. You're saying that getting the jets up is very expensive, cheaper to learn from Ukraine to use drone equipment in that kind of way. All of it, regardless, is going to be expensive. I just wonder, Minister, when it comes to Germany, how do you then sell that back to your people?
It's a long way to discuss it and to explain it every day. I mean, what I have been mentioning all the last 2.5 years or even more is that many countries in the northern part of Europe and in the eastern part of Europe woke up in 2014. We pushed the snooze button in Middle Europe and Western Europe and turned around to take another nap. And so we are now 8 years late to explain our population, our people, what is going on in the eastern flank, what is going on in Russia. And therefore it is so crucial and so important to explain it every day that doing less or doing nothing would cost less, of course, but to the end it would cost much more, both economically and in terms of our security. So it is about to explain it every day. This is not just like having fun spending money for weapons and drone systems and bolstering industry for defense. It is about achieving our security as fast as possible because we have a very real threat in Moscow and we need to face it.
And are the public buying that? Is there a sense of war fatigue, or are they open to this? Because arguably we're seeing that, especially in Germany, that's not quite the case. People are a little bit tired. They're voting extreme parties in. So maybe you're just losing the public.
To be honest, this is not a specific German issue. We talk about that in France, we talk about that in UK, we talk about that in Hungary and other countries, and the number of countries is rather increasing than decreasing. So we all have the same challenge in domestic issues, domestic policy. But still, we have to face the reality. There is no real reasonable alternative. So therefore, we discuss it every day. The far-right AfD is not increasing horribly. They are much too strong from my perspective, with 25% in the polls. They are not the majority, at least not in the whole Germany. In the eastern part, they are. They do play an important role over there. But still, we have a majority in Germany for supporting Ukraine, for improving the capabilities and everything for the Bundeswehr, to increase the investment into the Bundeswehr. All that has a majority in our population. But still, there is a kind of war fatigue, especially when it comes to Ukraine. I can't deny that, nobody can, because it's going already for 3.5 years, and the end is not visible.
And of course, you're right to point out that this is happening, the populist movement is happening through other nations as well. I'm taking advantage because you're there representing Germany, so thank you for putting up with my questions. When it comes to those nations really on the front line, for Estonia, for example, when you watch and hear these conversations that are happening in the UK, in France, Germany as well, are you tired by it? Are you a little bit like Poland also says, look, this is real, this is happening, it's our war, as echoed by the Polish Prime Minister. Do you feel like there are nations that just don't get it?
Well, I feel that we are on the right track, actually, because when somebody would have said last year here in Warsaw that this year we will reach the 5% consensus in The Hague, then probably somebody would have sent someone to the doctor. So the reality was that a year ago. So we were not close to the new level of the defense spendings. Now we are there. So, and then when I take also Estonia, we, like 4 years ago in 2022, we had 2.2 for defense. So then we started to grow, and next year it will be already above 5% in core defense, not 3.5 plus 1.5. So core defense will be 5, and it will go to 5.6 by 2029. So we are increasing constantly. So, and it's not about being tired or to explain over and over again why we need to do that. It's rather in opposite. We show the example what we need to do, and we understand that we are keeping the front door closed. So it's our responsibility also. There is not only Article 5, there is also Article 3 in the NATO treaty, which says that first and foremost you have to do everything yourself to defend your country. And to be honest, this 5% is a relatively small price to pay for sovereignty and freedom, because Ukraine is paying 25% of their GDP today. Russia is paying 10% to conduct the war. So in general, I would say that all here in Europe, we have to have more self-confidence. We have to be believing in ourselves that we can defend. So we have 500 million people. We have the Russian economy has the size of Italy's economy. So this is why let's just be more self-confident. Let's have this belief in ourselves that we can defend ourselves. Even when the US government is putting the focus more on INDOPAC, and even when they are discussing changing the force posture here in Europe. So that doesn't mean that we don't have to do anything. We have been relying on the United States, and the United States has been saying to us all the time that they will take care of us. But today, we have a clear answer to that we need to do more ourselves. And I'm happy to see that Germany's defense budget is increasing. Poland is also on 5%. So we are doing the right steps, but just we need to do them faster. So this is the point.
Quicker, faster, and interesting that you just talk about Article 3. Of course, we've been hearing about the invocation of Estonia, Poland as well. Article 4, Article 5, we're not there yet. Article 3, so you have to start yourself, looking after yourself, defending your own country. Do your population, say for the Netherlands, would they... Have you got them on board? And I guess a similar question to your German counterpart. Would, for example, if the Dutch government said, okay, we need conscription, we need you to really step up, would you have people rioting on the streets?
We have elections in a month.
We'll find out.
So maybe this is not the best moment for me to propose this. Now, yeah, thank you. No, so what we have seen, we had the NATO summit in The Hague, of course, and we decided on the 3.5 plus 1.5%. And if you ask people, there is a broad majority in favor of having this growth path towards 3.5%. One of the key questions now in our election campaign is how to fund this. And of course, some parties are saying we should cut government costs, others are saying we should raise taxes. Some are not saying anything because, it's not the most attractive thing to say during an election campaign. But this is what it's all about. It's, okay, how are we going to fund this journey? But if you look at the Dutch population, even though maybe Russia for many people feels quite far away, if you look at the history of the Netherlands, we are a mid-sized country in Europe which has been taken over by big countries and big empires throughout our entire history. So we do understand that we need this NATO alliance as the shield for our security. I think most people fully understand that. And we also understand that it comes at the cost. And also what Minister Pistorius is saying, if we do not spend it now, then the cost will be much, much higher in the future. But still, it is, of course, it's also painful to either raise taxes or to bring down government costs. So that's now a key question in our campaign. But I'm fully confident if there will be a new coalition after the elections, then there will be a clear commitment to reach that 3.5%, and we will find a path in order to fund that. When it comes to conscription and to the number of people now applying for the military, we see that the number of applicants is higher than ever. Whether it is a military job or whether it's a civil job, we have different types of training programs. They're all oversubscribed, sometimes even by tenfold. So I also see that there is a young generation that is understanding what is at stake. And they do understand that after 80 years of freedom in the Netherlands, it needs to be protected once more, and it doesn't come for free. So I think if you, in the case of the Netherlands, if we would make it mandatory, there could be much more pushback from society. And I think now, based on the willingness of people to do it voluntarily, I think we should cherish that and use that. And finally, also, we are growing, like in Germany and many other countries. But one of our key challenges now is to make sure that everyone who is applying for the military gets a proper training and gets a proper equipment, housing, and everything. And so also, in terms of what I need as a Minister of Defense, I don't need tens of thousands or even more people that are unqualified, that are not willing. I do need to make sure that the people who are applying, that they get a proper training and they get a proper position in the military.
Thank you, and appreciate it's a sensitive topic given where you are in the electoral cycle. For Germany, are you seeing that echoed, that experience in the Netherlands, an increase in people joining the military? Is conscription something that you're thinking about?
We do experience the same development. We have an increase of 30% of new military employees in the German army, 30% in this year, and we are doing everything to achieve another increasing in the years to come by making the service more attractive, better paid. But at the same time, we see the same, we face the same issues like housing, like equipment, like trainers. I mean, having 5,000 more personnel in the army means that we need 400 more trainers. So you can scale it up to maybe 200,000 in increasing the number in the army means reciprocally the number of trainers. So this is a real challenge we have to face and we deal with. But we just started the process in the parliament for a new law in terms of voluntary conscription, which is quite attractive. And I'm absolutely optimistic that we will reach our objectives up to 2029 to have 200,000 people in the reserve and an increasing number of the active personnel until 2031 up to 260,000. So we are increasing, we are building up, but we have practical problems. I mean, Germany gave up since 1994 more than 150 barracks. More than 150. We don't have the space for full-scale conscription of 360,000 young men becoming 18 years per year. Additionally, maybe women, the same number. So there is no space, and we don't need, and we are not allowed to have armed forces of a size of more than 370,000 active troops by the 2+2 contract from 1990.
Thank you. Interesting to see you leaning on the voluntary aspect of it. That's really quite fascinating, because I know in Poland, I believe the government was calling for 100,000, and I'm not quite sure they got anywhere near that. Estonia, where are you when it comes to your armed forces?
Well, we are doing fine. So, so I have, as I said, our budget is now 3 times bigger than it was in 2022. So it's not 30%, it's 3 times. And of course, we've increased our wartime structure. So when I bring the scales, our wartime structure is close to 50,000 warriors. So when you compare that to the US terms, then the US should have close to 20 million army. So they don't. So we, of course, we are based on the reserve army. So that means that we have the obligatory conscription service. Each year we have close to 4,000 young men and also girls coming to the conscription, and in this way, yes, we have constantly also retrainings. Every year we bring them back. In a way, when today there is a whistle, I am quite sure that in 24 hours I have a force of 45,000 men and women defending Estonia. So we've tested that, we have the equipment for that, and then we are ready to defend the Estonian nation and then Estonia from the first meter on. So this is from this point of view. But anyway, we also understand that Estonia is a small country, and we believe in NATO. So, but this is one of the reasons I spoke about Article 3, that we need to show also that we are taking our defense seriously, buying new equipment, new artillery systems, a lot of ammunition. Only for ammunition, we will spend from 22 to 29, when the full-scale war started, only to ammunition goes 5 billion euros. So, as a small country, putting 5 billion euros only to ammunition, I believe that it's quite a remarkable amount of money. So we are buying from Germany air defense systems and from France artillery systems, etc. So, but what Boris said, that we also have some challenges, and the challenge is also the defense industry, because defense industry has to cope with this increase of the money. Can you imagine, we have around 2 trillion more money in defense for the next 10 years. So that has to be absorbed by the industry. And we cannot only rely on the drones, we cannot only rely on the loitering ammunition or something like that, but we need also to have the tanks and legacy systems. So this is unfortunately the reality. So there are many challenges ahead of us, but one thing I still want to mark as an important topic is this: what we are doing ourselves is important, but what we do also regarding and towards Russia is even more important. So this is why the sanctions, this is why helping Ukraine is so vital. So I will just give you one number. So when we could lower internationally the oil price for $1, then that means around 10 million less for Russia daily. So this is because they are producing 10 million barrels daily, crude oil. So, but let's assume that they export only 30% of that. Then that brings us to the amounts around 100 million monthly, less for Russia. So even this small step, lowering the oil price for $1, will cause a huge damage for the Russian economy. So this is why we were fighting heavily in favor of lowering the oil price and putting the new sanctions on Russia, because this is actually what squeezes Russia to that position.
So you were fighting for that, and where did you get with that? Where do we stand right now, if you remind the audience?
Well, we have the agreement that the oil price is under 50. It's 49.75 or something like that. What is the exact number? But nevertheless, you know, we should go even lower, because this is something what squeezes Russia the most. And when we want to have the end to that war, starting from Kremlin, then we need to reach the middle class of St. Petersburg and Moscow. When we are not reaching them by oil prices, by not buying the Mercedes, so then it's very difficult to come into the end, because Putin doesn't care about the casualties, he doesn't care about the prices when these prices are not low enough.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the Commissioner one question, but in the meantime, I want you to start thinking about some questions for our guests. We've got the Defence Ministers and also, of course, the Commissioner. There are roving microphones, I hope, around the auditorium, so do raise your hand, grab a microphone, and then do please put your question. But while we're waiting for our esteemed, distinguished audience to think of some questions, Commissioner, according to, it seems an easy thing to do, isn't it? Just put more pressure on Russia. And are you exasperated that there are still European countries who are buying gas off of Russia?
Definitely, Definitely, a lot of things were done. Commission proposed, from the very beginning of the war, to move out from dependency on oil and gas, but still, there are things which need to be done. There are countries which still are buying. I think, well, my opinion, personal opinion, they had enough time to find alternative supplies, and perhaps they will do that, so it's good. But of course, there are also other issues which we need to try to resolve. For example, shadow fleet, going through Baltic Sea, creating a lot of troubles and dangers. Now there are, well, maybe still not precise information, but possibility for Russia to use those shadow fleet ships to launch drones, secretly from containers. It's also possible. So that is what we need to take into account. And definitely, in my view, well, we should have much more clear strategy what we are doing towards Russia. Now, sometimes we are, looking only how to be ready to defend ourselves against any kind of provocations. Ukraine is fighting the real war. Ukraine is able to bring the war back to Russian territory with deep strikes. In my view, we could support Ukrainian capabilities in that field much more, because if Putin does not want to stop the war, he needs to see how this war is coming into territory of Russia, and Ukrainians are doing really very effective job, exactly, cutting production of oil and so on. And here comes again, maybe coming back to the very beginning, of our discussion after President Zelensky, what he spoke. Also, we need to answer very, very, sincerely, question which is coming to us. Yes, we did a lot in supporting Ukraine during all those years of the war. Military, our support was up to 60 billion euros during those 3 years, the same with Americans. But if to look into annual support, it means 20 billion per year. It's somewhere around of 0.1% of our GDP, the same with Americans. We're ready to invest into our own defense, 3.5%. It will take time, but we shall do that. But when we're talking about Ukraine and what Prime Minister Tusk said, Ukraine war is our war. For some reason, we are investing only 0.1%. And I think that we need to do more, and that could be a convincing argument to Putin to stop the war. So that is why I believe that, now new discussions about giving frozen assets as a loan, towards Ukraine can be very, important game changer in the whole, how to say, this, environment of the war, which Putin is still is trying to continue. We need to convince Putin that he will not achieve anything, and support Ukraine can be much bigger than it was till now.
Commissioner, thank you. We've got the first question coming from Tobias Ellwood, former member of the UK Parliament, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Tobias Ellwood, former foreign minister. Really pleased to hear the increased emphasis on defense posture for Europe. But the couple of comments that came out, firstly from the panel, was we must be more confident. And the second one was that Moscow is the long-term threat. Surely the priority is Ukraine. That's where the battle is now. Is it not time that we now develop a no-fly zone, that we stand up to Putin, that we look Putin in the eye, that we develop the Cold War statecraft skills that we had and rekindle that so we can actually stop Russia now rather than waiting something much larger to develop in the future? Thank you.
Who wants to take that on?
Well, we should have done that in 22, so you know that, Tobias. So it's not a question, but the question is when you say that there is a no-fly zone, then you have to also be able to guarantee that. And to guarantee that, you need to be there. So we are not there. So we've given the F-16s, but it's a battle zone at the moment. So that means that you should send all the equipment and all the fighter jets, and you have to secure this no-fly zone. So, and we're not able to do that at the moment, and even the Ukrainians are not able to do that. But nevertheless, as a position, we all understand that practically there is a no-fly zone. You don't have any civilian aircrafts flying in Ukrainian airspace.
But if I may, you're not taking drones that are coming through, and that's a no-fly zone.
Okay, but when we talk about the drones, we need probably more than 12 minutes we have left, but even Ukrainians having 4 layers of air defense, starting from Gepards and 762s and 12-7s, and also the interceptor drones, and ending with the Patriots, they cannot take down everything. Still 20-25% comes through. So this is the reality. And we here in Europe are in peace. So we cannot have the same layout for the air defense. Or of course we can, but then that means that 10% of our defense spendings will go only to standby solutions. So this is why even Ukrainians cannot take down all the drones. So you cannot put a curtain up to 10 kilometers and to have a curtain. So, but we need to help, and Ukrainians are doing amazingly well. So I was just a week ago there, or 2 weeks ago, sorry, and went to see the factories, what the Ukrainians are able to do, and also the intercept drones, new possibilities, all that. So we need to help them financially, and they can help us also, as also Andrius said, because they can give us this feedback and this knowledge very quickly.
And that certainly was something the President was saying. There's the woman on the very end, and then there's a lady who's been very patiently putting her hand up there. So that's where you're going next.
Natalia Puzirev, I'm a French MP and a member of the NATO PA as well. My question is linked to drones. I think we can be ready in 3, 4, 5 years maybe, but what about today? What about tomorrow? What about the drone wall? Is there a possibility at the European level that we have a fast track to equip our nations? And to start with, do we have kind of a record of all the solutions that have been developed by SMEs across, our countries? Because innovation is moving ahead, but how can we support them and consolidate this solution and provide them to where it's needed? Thank you.
Are you asking if the bureaucracy of the EU is keeping up with the innovators? Commissioner, that's for you.
Well, definitely we need to build what we call drone wall, especially in this, Eastern Bloc countries, but also, other countries are able to join. And we need, first of all, to recognize what we are missing and what we were talking with Minister, exactly, with other ministers. So we need to see that for time being, our capabilities to detect drones is quite limited. We have good capabilities with our air defense forces to see, jets, to see maybe missiles, but drones are small and drones are flying very low. So what Ukrainians did, say, for example, from the very beginning, they built a whole network of acoustic sensors. And that allows them to follow where the drones are flying. The same with special radar. So that's one thing which we need to do. And it can be done quite quickly. I hope that we shall manage to do that, all together. There are some new industrial policy instruments which are coming with forthcoming EDIP regulation, European Defense Industry Program regulation, which allows for member states to create a joint, some kind of joint legal platform and to do the job in a much more effective way. So we are progressing, we are moving ahead. Maybe the question is why we did not do that, months ago or 2 months ago or a year ago when really, it was becoming clear that Russians and Ukrainians are developing very effective drone capabilities. We were in some way, waiting for something. But that's perhaps quite natural psychologically. Till you are not hit, by the crisis, you are not moving ahead. So let's learn also that lesson, that warfare doctrines are changing very rapidly, and we need to be able to adapt much more quickly to the changes which we can see in Ukraine, we can see in other places. And that's what we are looking, how we can be really effective from that point of view.
Minister Pistorius, I know you want to come in on that.
Just a few words in terms of that. I mean, in the first place, I really appreciate very much the idea, the concept of a drone wall alongside the Eastern Wall. but we should pay attention to the management of expectations. We are not talking about a concept which will be realized within the next 3 or 4 years, even more, I think. So we have to think and act in priorities, and those are others, I think. We need more capabilities and more capacities in what we described before. That means drone defense, of course, but not by a drone wall. We need to be quicker in development. I mean, everything we build now or we procure now will be overruled in between a couple of years by new technological developments. So we need a fluent process in all that issues. This is, from my perspective, very, very crucial.
Okay, thank you.
Just take 20 seconds to reply, and this is a very simple question to you. Can you tell to your friends in European Parliament that, or ask them, are they ready to reduce the common agriculture policy toward defense? So, or not. So, and then because the European budget is still the European budget, and when Commissioner Kubilius wants to have more money on drones and drone wall, then he needs to find that money, and to find that money is the budget of European Union. So, where the money is in agriculture. So, was it more important, agriculture or defense and freedoms? So, just a quick question back. I know.
Oh, and there you see the problems. There you see the problem areas. Yes, the woman who's been waiting patiently. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Antonia. I'm a researcher at Georgetown University, but I come from Romania. My question is also on the eastern flank. We at times forget that we have the southern part of the eastern flank, which often appears like a soft underbelly of NATO, in which we do not have enough deterrence. And I know that the European Commission recently launched this new EU strategic approach for the Black Sea, including the EU Maritime Security Hub for the Black Sea region. So my question very briefly for you all, ministers and commissioner, how can we learn from our colleagues in the northern part of the eastern flank to assure deterrence in the Black Sea, to make sure that the Black Sea will not become a Russian lake? Thank you.
Commissioner, do you want to take that, seeing as we have no southern counterparts here?
Well, first of all, I think that Ukrainians managed to achieve that, Black Sea is not becoming a Russian lake. And they managed to achieve that with new technologies, with drones, sea drones, and so on and so on. So that is one thing. Second, when we are talking about this, our defense capabilities in eastern northern flank, definitely we need to speak in a broader way, and that is what we call now, earlier we were calling it Eastern Border Defense Shield, now we call it Eastern Flank Watch, whatever, we can change those names, but essence is the same. It should consist of several most important components. First of all, what we call, well, in a metaphorical way, ground wall, what, for example, such countries like Poland, like Baltic states, are now developing, how to create all the anti-mobility means on the border, not to allow enemy to come with tanks or heavy artillery. That is important to have. Then the drone wall, how to create capabilities really to be ready to defend ourselves, our territories against intrusion of drones. That is really, again, we shall have some kind of concept much more clear where we need to build, what we need to build, and that will come, I hope that very soon. And also we need to have much more clear strategy how we are ready to defend our maritime security. From, it's Black Sea, it's Baltic Sea, everywhere we can face, different challenges, different threats, and we need to be ready to be effective in defending ourselves against any possible threats.
Thank you. You want to come in? Yes.
Yeah, so I think innovation is important. Sea drones, we don't talk that much about it. We often talk, of course, about drones that fly, but in sea it's as important. I think being able to deploy quickly, I think we have learned that from the NATO missions that have recently taken place, that's important. And third, if an individual country takes a certain step, for example, like Finland has done towards a Russian ship, then we should all support that country. And I think that's sometimes also what's happening now. Of course, a country is experiencing an incursion from Russian drones. Then that country is outspoken about it, and then you see the other NATO members or EU members, they are, easing their language, and we get these endless discussions. We should always back that one country that's under pressure from Russia.
Thank you. We've got 2 minutes and 3 questions. The lady over there, and then we had a gentleman here and a gentleman there. So, this is always the way. At the end, you guys...
Thank you. Katerina Rybika, I'm the founder of H+H Labs, and my question is slightly different. It's also about waters, but how are we ready to deter if the threat if Russia decides to weaponize water? We had a case in Ukraine where the toxins were dumped in the river next to Chernihiv city, just 100 kilometers from Kiev. It got spread. We have a case of Kakhovka Dam that caused enormous ecological threat, including the poisonous waters. Are we ready in Europe to deter the threat of weaponizing of our water resources? Thank you.
That's an interesting point. Who wants to take that up? Yes, sir.
Yes, we are.
Excellent. Germany's in. Estonia, Netherlands?
We have a lot of water. And I agree. Now, I think we should realize that Russia can weaponize everything. And that's what we experience now. Also by using small means, just 1 or 19 drones, they try to disturb our societies. And I think we talk a lot about military preparedness, but to talk about the resilience of our society, broadly speaking, is extremely important. And our water infrastructure and our water resources, of course, they are vital. So they should be one of those key elements of this resilience agenda that we have.
It's an interesting question. Let's get the final 2 questions here. There were 2 hands who have now disappeared. That gentleman there on the corner.
Quick question to Minister Pistorius and to the Commissioner. As we hit on extremist parties gaining ground, and I think they're also promoting false extremist parties gaining ground, and I think they're also promoting false peace paradigms through all Europe. And I wonder, with all the different ministries involved in this more holistic and strategic approach to make defense also part of democratic resilience, how do you see the connection between, for example, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Inner Affairs in Germany with civil society? So how can we better the building up the topic of defense, for example, in programs like Demokratie leben, for example, in Germany and also all around Europe? Thank you.
I rather prefer not to talk about specific projects in Germany. What I prefer to talk about is that we need a change of mindset, and we have been starting already for that, doing that in the last years. But still, as I mentioned earlier in this talk, we have still many people who are afraid of what's going on, and they rather prefer to go under the blanket and to wait until it's over. But that wouldn't happen, as we all know. So it's about explaining every day. And of course, it's about making clear that this is not only about supporting Ukraine or facing the threat of Russia. It's about making clear to ourselves that it is about defending our way of life. Our way of like believing in whatever I want, loving whoever I want, demonstrating on our streets wherever I want and against or for whatever I want. To be able and to be willing to defend our way of life, our democracy, our freedom is not an issue for the state, because the state is not possible to defend itself, because the state is just a construction. What we need is people being passionate when it comes to democracy and freedom, to see that everybody in every age can do something to defend our country, our life. And that means being able and willing to deter in the first place. So this is what we have to do, and we do that in our government, together with the Ministry of the Interior, together with other ministries, the Ministries of Economy, and it's about discussing that every single day.
What a note on which to leave it. I'm so sorry, sir. We are out of time and we've got such a tight schedule that we need to wrap up. But Ministers, Commissioner, thank you so much for just being very honest and open and sharing your thoughts with us here today. Thank you. A round of applause, please. Thank you, sirs. We are now taking a short break.